and the organization of our lives. Now, this is way too complicated to just spend 4 or 5 minutes on. So I'll just give you an example of something we've all experienced in the last 2 or 3 years. What is the most significant social event of the last couple of years that has dominated journalism and the world at large? I would say it's the emergence of all kinds of social movements that seem to escape our definitions of social movements. And traditionally, when we think of social movements, we think of political parties, and unions, or students that protest rising costs. Those are social movements. We can define them. They have logos and representatives, and they are organized. And they have clear goals and messages. But what has happened in the last couple of years? Well, think about this. Some of the revolutions in Eastern Europe, World Trade Organization protests in Seattle, the White March in 1996. I don't know if you remember this, probably not. But this was a spontaneous eruption of mass protest in Belgium because there was a man was being tried at the time for murdering a couple. It's a horrible story. Murdering children, and the trial was just a nightmare. It was a horrible, horrible nightmare. And people were so upset with the system that they just walked on the street with these white balloons, spontaneously. So it was this very mediagenic moment of people that politically had very different opinions, but all got together randomly, briefly, to protest passionately something that was happening in their lives. What about the Arab Spring, right? This is Egypt, Cairo, 2 years ago. And you've seen these pictures. And you probably have also seen that every third person on this picture is using a device. Right? You see it here, 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 there, everybody. Everybody's recording, sharing, participating, remixing, forwarding, liking, recommending, and so forth. And these people don't agree with each other. The simple fact that there were men and women demonstrating side by side is incredible. And it was only temporary, right? But still. So temporarily, very passionate, often endangering their own lives, people got together and protested, made something. Of course, here in Spain, the Indignados movement is an interesting example of this too. Coordinating, if you could say coordinating, micro-coordinating through smartphones, through BlackBerry, to Twitter, through those kind of devices and technologies. The riots in London the year before the Olympics, the David Cameron government blamed the riots not on its own failed social system or policy, but on Twitter and BlackBerry, and started drafting a law that would enable the government to shut down the internet if people would protest. That law is already in effect in the United States. So media are blamed for what's happening in the real world, which is an interesting mixture of media and life. Of course, the same BlackBerries and Twitters were then later on used for people to clean up the mess that they made. But of course, that's conveniently forgotten. Occupy, the Occupy movement, cannot be disentangled for the role media played in it, right? Occupy started as a hashtag, we know the word now, 3 months before people actually started camping in downtown New York. Right? It lived in media before it lived anywhere else. What about Coney? Some of you may have participated in this. A worldwide social movement that never actually happened in the real world. Or did it? Yes, it did. Of course it did. It was virtual and real at the same time. Now, what all these examples have in common is that they're unique in the way that they are organized. They bring together people from a wide variety of perspectives and ideas and social demographic backgrounds. They bring them together temporarily, because they disappear as quickly as they rise up. They bring them together on the basis of very strong emotions, and they bring them together through the organization of personal mobile network devices. How do we know what is going on? How do we know where to congregate? How do we know how to avoid the police? And are they real? Right? I have colleagues, sociologists, political scientists, who argue that none of this is real. Because none of this produces anything other than angry people, angry mobs. That's why a government like the David Cameron one in the UK is so angry with this. but they're real nonetheless. They have a massive impact in the way we look at the world. They are also a way of looking at the world. Why do all these people, why don't they just, vote for specific political parties? Because you know what's happening, people vote less and less and less. Why don't they join a union and protest that way? No, union membership is catastrophically low. But still we act. Why would we do this? I think it has to do with those disappearing media that I just talked about. I think my good friend and colleague in New York, Dr. Rushkoff, he wrote this in 2003, and I think here's the key for me to understand it, is that living in media makes us aware that reality is open source. Now what is interesting about this statement is the link between reality, we can feel it, we can see each other, we can shake hands later, and open source, which, as you probably know, is a software term. It is a term for software that anybody can edit. Like some of you use Firefox as the browser to go online. That's open source. Anybody can edit Firefox. Most of the computer systems in the world run on open source software. IBM, Microsoft, they all use open source software to run their companies. Sony is another one. Open source is software, but according to Doug Rushkoff, it's reality. Or at least it's the way we experience reality in media. Or a better way to explain this,